Welcome back to the podcast, friends. Just want to remind everybody to certainly check out the show notes on each episode. I have left my Linktree link down below, which has all the things I am currently involved with, things I'm passionate about, hobbies I have. If you're interested in any of those, certainly click the links, check them out, reach out if you want more information on any of that. Also, don't forget to leave a rating on the podcast. It's actually quite helpful for discoverability. I'm learning all this as I go, so check out the links in the bio, leave a review, all of this if you want to. Let's get into the podcast. All right, welcome back to the Just Some BS podcast. Today we have Jim Emmerich on. I said Emmerich, that is correct?
Correct.
Beautiful. So fractional CFO for entrepreneurial-led companies with revenues up to 100 million. Jim, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. This is awesome.
Yeah, I'm very excited. So I want to get into all the goodies. So first question, actually, before I do that, I haven't been doing this for the last couple of podcasts, but I like to ask people, can you give me like your career in under 2 minutes?
Yeah. I think I'll start from most recent and work backwards. So as you just mentioned, I founded a company called Backbone CFO. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about it, so I'll just go backwards. Prior to doing this, I was a vice president of finance and contracts for a German-based manufacturer based in Emerich, Germany. They were building a plant in New Jersey where I live. And they hired me along with a bunch of other folks to be a project kind of ground team in the US on a greenfield project. So I did that for about a year. Prior to doing that, I spent almost 6 years in the defense and aerospace market for a small business manufacturing parts for primarily the Navy, a little bit of the Air Force, armament support equipment, and tactical wheeled vehicle replacement parts. A lot of fun, again, small business. And then prior to doing that, I spent 4 years working for my church. So as a Christian, I love the local church and got an opportunity to do that with a growing organization there as the finance manager. And then prior to doing that, I love telling this story. I spent my first year and a half in, I'll call it post college, my first job in banking, where I fell asleep at work and realized I absolutely hated it. And I'm a high energy person. And for me to fall asleep doing anything means it was pretty boring. And so that was like, in a nutshell, 2 minutes or less, I hope, my career. Yeah.
Nice. So that leads right into my first question. What was the hardest internal change you had to make going from corporate to entrepreneur?
I have to be honest, it wasn't hard at all. And so when I was at the company was called Parts Life, the defense contractor I mentioned, it was really the first taste that I had of really, I would consider it hyper growth. We grew the company, and like I said, about a little less than 6 years, we grew it from about 4 million in revenue to 35, 40 million,
Wow.
Multiple acquisitions. The CEO of the company, who's still the CEO, his name is Sam, still a mentor of mine. Entrepreneur of entrepreneurs, just an incredible guy. And when I saw and got to experience that, I knew that was it. Like I had hit it. Like I don't own this company, but this is the next best thing. And it was so much fun. I don't regret it at all. It was like just an absolute joy to be part of that organization. And then I went and worked for a 3,000 person company. And I realized very quickly within months, this is terrible. I don't fit here. There's nothing wrong with the company. They're fine. I was the problem. And I realized as a vice president, it meant nothing essentially. I guess it meant something, but not really. My impact was that small. And I realized, man, not that I made a mistake. I think I was so glad that I saw it. And even when I was in banking, I worked for a top 5 bank in the country, obviously extremely large, right? So I just knew that corporate wasn't for me at that point.
So with the Parts Life experience, do you think that gave you the confidence to say, hey, maybe I can do this?
Yeah. Because I knew at a very early age, probably 18, 19 years old, I wanted to do business. I wanted to start a business at some point. I had no idea what that meant, being that young. But once I saw it being played out at Parts Life in a very real way, I thought, man, I could actually, not only do I want to do this, I could see myself doing this. Now I could see myself in the process. So, that was extremely helpful. It was pivotal in me being able to do what I do now.
Do you think there was a major, since it was easy because you got to kind of experience it without having to directly experience it, was there any mindset shift that really stuck from working for someone else to working for yourself?
Yes. I think one of the things that I learned And this was absent in a larger organization. But when I was at Parts Life, this idea, and I kind of latch onto it these days, is that hungry dogs run fast. I say it all the time. Like any small business, and I'll just pick on large businesses, there can be a lot of cushion. You can exist without creating value for a very long time. And that's just not true in a small organization. And we were only 120, 130 employees. You don't hide there. If you're not adding value, if you're not creating some kind of change, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. And the company I run now is significantly smaller than that. And I have no problem sharing that and saying that and living that out in our company today. Hungry dogs run fast. And as soon as you become a little fat and a little bit, complacent, you stop creating value, you stop challenging, you stop changing. And at least for me in my life, that's a really stale place to be. And I don't really want any part of it.
Yeah, no, I hear that. We hear that a lot at our company at SWF. It's like new people will walk in, and the first thing we tell people in interviews is we move really quickly. So like, get ready, strap in. It's going to be probably a little bit different than something. It depends on where you're coming from, but like, so one thing we talk about is pace quite a bit, because I'm with you. We just peaked 170, but like, it's still, everything matters. Every person matters. That push matters. So yeah, that's really great. Never heard this saying, hungry dogs run fast, so I kind of like that.
Yeah. Another good saying about dogs is the fastest way to kill a dog is to have two people feed it. And again, it just goes back to that. I don't even have dogs, by the way. It's just, I don't know why. But it just goes back to that accountability element of like, hey, in this organization, accountability, visibility on what you do and what you produce is extremely high. And if you enjoy that environment, man, this is the place for you. If you don't enjoy that environment, this is not the place. And there's not really a gray area there. Yeah. It's either you hate this or love it. And that being said, I think people that do well in large corporate environments, and this is zero diss to that at all, it's just different, do better in places where, maybe it's not so intense. The intensity around accountability is not there.
Yeah, I don't think it is for everyone. I think you're dead on there. I think there's a lot of pressure, responsibility, accountability, ownership that comes in those spheres, and I just don't think not everybody needs to be wired or is wired that way.
Nope.
Yeah, that's good. So you've closed 20 million plus in deals, acquisitions, real estate, working capital. What's one financial move so powerful but often overlooked by business owners?
I see this, I would say maybe more times than I'd like to admit, or I've seen it more times than I'd like to admit. And that is more or less the wrong types of, financing used for the wrong types of moves. And I'll explain what that means.
Yeah.
So a lot of businesses, not all businesses, but a lot of business have something called a line of credit. Very standard, debt facility that's used to, or should be used to fill working capital needs. So your accounts receivables outstanding too long, or your AP and your AR are upside down for whatever reason. Short-term fixes, fine. I jump into a lot of scenarios where it's like, hey, yeah, we have that $1 million line. Awesome. What'd you use it for? Well, we did a bunch of renovations in our building. We bought all these brand new machines. And it never comes out this way, but after looking at the balance sheet, it's like, oh, we funded our personal lifestyle through kind of sucking some of that. And what it really boils down to, none of those things are necessarily bad or wrong. We just use the wrong type of debt facility for the wrong type of investment. And I think the thing that I like to try to communicate to the folks we work with and our CFOs is, if, just picking on equipment as an example, we don't want to tie up short-term capital or a debt facility that's meant to be short-term, i.e. a working capital line of credit, for a thing that's going to depreciate or have a useful life of 5 to 10 years, or maybe longer. So that's just a wrong use of that capital. Again, it's a line of credit's not a bad thing, and neither is buying equipment. But when your need for having that equipment is utilized by a short-term or with a short-term facility, well, now, and you start to do that multiple times over multiple years, that's when you start to see people's balance sheet get upside down. And we no longer have the capacity. You go back to the bank, you go back to your bank, you say, hey, can I have another $1 million? And they're like, hang on, how you haven't grown or barely grown. How do you need this now? And you still have the AR problem that you had when you first requested the first $1 million. Well, now I'm less trusting. Now I'm going to dig in a little bit further. and all sorts of issues arise. But nonetheless, I think the fundamental issue is that we're just using the wrong. No one did the due diligence, or maybe you hit the easy button thinking, hey, I just have this line. I have this need right now. It's present. It's in my face. I got to make a move. I'm just going to do it. And it's like, man, if you just had maybe a little bit more counsel around you, maybe a little bit more patience and visibility, maybe going out and getting some term debt or leasing that equipment might have put you in a better cash flow position, still saved your line for when you need the line, traditionally speaking, and now you don't have that issue.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you for the clarity on that. I think the simplicity in the way you explain that is probably, I think money's money to a lot of people in a lot of situations. And I think you're dead on there where the line's kind of your balloon to help you land on the ground softly. And I could see how it's when it's misused. I haven't been in that situation in the sense of like thinking of it that way. Maybe, I guess that's a good thing as well.
And just to add to that too, for your listeners who might have a line of credit, because I want to be clear, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, correct.
But a good litmus test over the course of a year, can you pay your line of credit down? And if you can't, now there might be a reason why you can't, but if you can, and you're in that position, I would take a good hard look at why. There might be some upside downness in your balance sheet. You might have some systemic issues. I mean, I've seen it, right? Certain customers that are highly concentrated around, they string you out. And those things definitely exist. I don't want to say they don't, but I would take a hard look at it. If you can't pay your line of credit down within a year's time for a 30, 60-day period, I would encourage you to take a look at that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's one of my favorite metrics. We haven't touched our line, I think, in 3 or 4 years now. And we were really heavy dependent on it when I got there. Yeah. And it was mostly just around education of billing, right? Where customers said, this is what we're going to do to you. And then we just started saying, no, you're not. Construction should be we do a lot of construction manufacturers. For some reason, this manufacturing sector, we think of it as we'll pay you when we get the product. Nowhere else in the world, at least from my dumb perspective, is this the case. Amazon takes the money before the package ever comes to your house. If you buy an air handling unit from Germany, guess what? Before it gets in the port, it's full payment before it ever gets on a shipping dock. So why do we treat our manufacturers in the US of, I won't pay you until that thing is in my facility? I think that is complete horseshit.
Yep. And I think a lot of people, especially the ones that I see that have the most challenge with this concept, especially in manufacturing, and I hate to say this, they're the ones that have been around a long time. This is the way it's been. This is how our customers treat us. We don't have any other way. But the truth is, when's the last time you actually pushed back on that? You've already said it, right? That's a perfect example.
Totally agree. And I think the scariest thing, because I remember this conversation specific with our team, is what if we lose the customer because of it? I said, well, we're their bank. Like, I get what you're saying, but at what point are you just going to allow us financially to be strained because of the work we're getting? Thank you for the work, but here's the money that we have to cover for you to get the work. I think that's bullshit.
Yeah.
So we've hit that pretty hard over the last 3-4 years, and it's made a complete difference on cash flow.
Awesome. Love to hear that.
So you help owners gain. Oh, let me ask you a totally different question. This isn't a question I had, but it's something we had in our Vistage presentation. And I think it's really fascinating for maybe small to medium-sized companies. In your world, and providing fractional CFO is kind of like the perfect gap between when do you think, in your expert opinion, you need to have a controller jump to a CFO, size-wise or vision-wise, I guess?
Yeah. So I would say there are two different roles. And I guess the first thing I would do is define, at least in my mind, what the two distinct differences are. Your controller, by the way, let me backtrack because I'm not exactly sure who's listening. So I'm talking about a small business, generally under $100 million in sales. You start talking significantly more than that, things get very complex. But I'm talking small business under 100 million in sales revenue, generally simple businesses. Your controller role will never go away. And when I say that, what I mean is the controller is, at the end of the day, going to be responsible for day-to-day accounting operations, general ledger management, ARAP, payroll. They might not do all those things, but they at minimum oversee it. And in many cases, they might be the one executing on that. Month-end close, adjustments, inventory adjustments, things like that. CFO, fractional CFO, or full-time CFO, if you're large enough to incorporate that, That is a very distinct role. And the best way I could describe it in a short sentence is they are part of the leadership team, not the accounting department.
Ooh, I like that.
So the reason I say that is because the accounting department has a function, a standalone function within your organization, and that's never going to change. The leadership team does too. And the leadership team's function is to set the vision and execute against it. We're talking strategic plans. We're talking about projections and forecasts. We're talking about financial strategy, capital allocation, resourcing, things like that. That is not the job of the controller for two reasons. One, that controller person, it'd probably be an unfair expectation to think they should do those things on top of the things that you know they already need to do, because those are important things. You actually can't do, or at
The
least have
vision.
good data. You can't without the good information, right?
Yeah, that's
So
fair.
I'll be the biggest advocate. Your controller should be freaking kick ass, and they should be paid well, and you should take care of them. And any CFO who says, hey, we should get rid of the controller, they don't know what they're talking about.
Yep.
That being said, the second component of that is, I like to say that the CFO, because they're part of the leadership team, has to bring three things to the table. Number one, they have to bring leadership, meaning they have to be able to create change. Number two, they have to be able to create accountability to the change, which is not it's a skill set. It's a characteristic trait. It's not a thing. It's not a qualification. It's not a degree or certification. That's just who you are. And the last thing, and this is the challenge, you need perspective. That means that if you haven't sat in that seat before and seen similar or the same things in the past, it's going to be difficult for you to bring your perspective to the table when we're talking about things like expansion or financing or strategy. So you need those three things. And I would say that's the differentiator between the controller and the CFO or fractional CFO.
That's brilliant. It's really good. Thank you for that.
I didn't, you kind of asked the question on like, at what point do you need those two? And again, I wish there was a clear, this is the
There's
answer.
not.
But I would
50
say,
people.
yeah, 50 people, and then you make that move. Man, that would be so simple. But I would say, generally speaking, 20 million in sales has been like a really good barometer for us to say if you're at the, and there's, certainly upper and lower thresholds here, but 20 million in sales, you're absolutely in ballpark to say, in my opinion, fractional CFO. Once you get to that 50, 75 million, let's start talking, how do we position you for a full-time CFO?
Yeah, and I think that's really good because I also think it also is the mode of business you're in, right? So you could be a $75 million company and just say, you know what, we're good.
Stable.
We're going to cruise, right? Controller, ledgers, they have their whole team underneath them taking care of the day-to-day. If
Yes.
your visions are complex, you're going to want to talk to somebody who can model this shit out for you and say, this is a go or no go. That's the hardest part.
That is a great point. And I'll give you a great example of this. We had a construction client up in Connecticut a few years ago who, when we engaged them, was growing. About a $15 million company, they were growing. They got to the point where they did grow, and we were part of that equation, and they stopped. And also, it was okay because the owner didn't want to grow anymore. They were like, no, we're good, man. This is complex enough. We got what we need out of the business. We stabilized. Thank you very much. And it was a great 3-year relationship. And then the relationship ended. It's okay. Yeah. So I don't think it's a one size fits all answer, but I also don't think it's this is now your answer forever. To your point, the mode of business matters.
Yeah, love that. You help owners gain financial clarity. Can you talk us through a typical moment you see when leaders realize our numbers aren't actually telling the truth and how you guide them back to solid ground?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say this is typically the first aha moment is typically about a month after our engagement starts. And it's what we call implementation, just like a fancy word for onboarding. But at the end of this, we present the first time we'll present what we call a financial projection.
Yeah.
And just, I'll do a quick explanation of what that is and why the aha moment typically comes at this point. So most business owners, hopefully you're looking at your financials once a month backwards, right? So you're looking at what happened last month and maybe the preceding months. Our job now is to come in and say, okay, that's great. Let's continue to do that. How about let's look out through the end of the year? How about the next year, year and a half? What does that look like? So we go through this month-long process, and at the end of it, boom, we have that. And it's, hey, here's your P&L for the next year. Here's what we call cash impact of your profit and loss, because we have to look at your balance sheet changes as well, not just a P&L. Mm-hmm. And then we present that, and it's like, crap, the 5 goals that we had, based on the operational things that are happening today, there's not a shot we can hit that
Love
level of
that.
profitability. And they see it mapped out. We keep it really simple. It's like, oh, you thought your gross profit was 50%, but after we normalized it and we did all of our adjustments for, work in process or inventory, oh, you're at 42%, 8% away from what you thought. Well, what has to be true to get it to 50%?
Yeah.
Or maybe we're talking about net profit. It's like, oh, we thought we were at 10% net profit, but in reality, we're really more like 2 to 3% net profit, especially when we go from cash to accrual. And it's like, whoa, I didn't know that. Well, okay. So again, is the goal 10%? Yeah, of course the goal is 10%. We got to exit in 10 years. Awesome. Well, again, what has to be true from today to 2 years from now to make incremental change to get there? And it most certainly is not, I hope we get there in 2 years. That is not the answer. And I can tell you that it becomes very intentional at that point and the light bulb goes off. It's like, oh, we can see now.
Yeah, I am an absolute data monster. Always have been, was in my previous career as well. I love it so much. I think it just like, and I remember coming into my role, it's like I went to the things I was good at because I didn't know what I was doing on most of the other stuff. And like you just start setting those barometers and the age old saying of what get measured gets done. And as you start laying that stuff out, and really the business finance thing was the last thing I learned because it was so novice to that. But then when we brought our controller in, we started doing budgets, we started reviewing them quarterly, monthly closeouts within 5 days, like all this stuff, right? And then you get in real time. And then it's like, okay, now I can see why. And then you start taking, like you said, the rear view and turning that into the windshield. And it's like, holy shit, anything is possible at that point. Then you almost don't have to be afraid of everything. You just say, is it the right time or not?
Yep. That's a great point. And I'll tell you what, I run my own business and I'm running a small consulting firm. And I still get to that point, and I'm a freaking CFO where I know I'm like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to put this together and look at like 6 months from now. I know it's going to be crappy, where it's going to miss my expectation.
Sure.
But inevitably, every time I do it, I feel better. At least when I know there's a challenge where I'm missing a goal in something, now I see it, I know it. And I'll tell you what, creating visibility at minimum allows you to attack the right things. But I still get that same angst and anxiety around like the process and the just going through the motions of actually having to do the hard thing, which is look forward. It's easy to pull a P&L from your accounting system and be like, oh, we had a great month last month. We're not. But it's a little bit more difficult to put the time, energy, effort around looking in the next year or two and, making sure the model's broken, not the method. And, so those are things that I think all business owners, entrepreneurs, regardless of shape or size, have to get into a rhythm of doing. Again, and maybe you're not big enough for a fractional CFO. I don't care. It's still, you have to figure out a way to get this through. And if you are of size to have a CFO or a fractional CFO, you ought to be looking and sitting down with that person on a monthly basis and looking into the future, because inevitably it's business, right? Something's broken. I know it is. I don't need to be a genius to know that. And you have got to identify what it is. The best CEOs, the best entrepreneurs I know, identify them very early on and they see it well in advance.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And there's no way to see it without data unless you have a really good gut.
I think intuition's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people all the time that nothing of what we do precludes you, who has probably more intimate knowledge than anyone else of your business. That doesn't preclude you from utilizing your gut instinct at all. And it never should, because your gut instinct probably got you to where you're at, or at least by a large degree. So we don't want to remove that, but we want to maybe more enable that with good data. So I don't think it's like mutually exclusive stuff. You're going to have this, listen, CEOs, entrepreneurs, you got your gut instinct and you should use it. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have data.
Yeah, I love that, because we bring the subjectivity in the gut, and we just need the data to either validate it or tell you to calm down.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You're dead on about that. 100%.
And that goes with like one of my favorite stories around that. I think subjectivity leadership is one of the scariest things people can do. Like I'll get in my head sometimes about an individual, right? Maybe it's a project manager. Don't feel like they're stepping up to the plate. Maybe I feel like they're slacking a little bit. First place I go to is our cost report. Look at their projects. How are they running? How up to date they are? What's their billings look like? And guess what? Everything looks good. So I calm down, because maybe I'm just having a shitty day and I'm projecting it onto somebody else,
Yeah. Yeah, so that data is helping you validate what you're feeling. And again, to your point, sometimes it can coincide what you're feeling, and sometimes maybe it settles you down or
Yeah.
amps you up where your feelings, you know, I see this a lot on the people side of the business, and I'm guilty of this just like anybody else is. You have your certain preconceptions about people and what they're doing and not doing. I remember especially when I was an in-house CFO, like would get really judgmental on certain people and their output and their expectations, you know, but the data doesn't lie in many cases. But having good data is like a precursor to being able to leverage it. So to your point earlier, we're all also under the assumption that your data is good, you know, so having really good data, hence the need to have great teams in place is key.
Yeah, it's great. I love that. Between acquisitions and equipment financing, you've seen transitions in cash flow. What's a lesser known cash flow blind spot that has sunk otherwise healthy businesses?
You know, I'm going to just go with like the latest and greatest because you know, as you all can imagine, we're not a big company, but we're working with anywhere from 30 to 40 companies a month. And then we're just talking to business owners like yourself and all the time. The one thing that I see in industrial businesses and construction in particular is, you know, we've been really hounding on cash conversion cycle. We have a manufacturing client right now.
Can you give me the equation for that? I don't know what that phrase means.
Yeah, so for your audience, cash conversion cycle is the combination of three things. It's your days payable, your days sales outstanding. Well, before I give you the definition, let's layman's terms.
Yeah.
I put $1 into the business. When do I get $1 back?
Gotcha.
Well, hopefully like $1.50 or $2, right?
$1.10.
$1.10. Lord, hopefully it's not 90 cents. Right. But how long does that process take? And fundamentally, it's going to be the combination of three things: days sales outstanding. So how long is my AR sitting out?
Okay.
Days payable outstanding. How long does it take for me to pay my subs, suppliers, material handlers, all that stuff? If you have inventory, not all businesses do, but some do, it's your days inventory outstanding as well. Combine all those three things, you have, again, in layman's term or technical accounting terms, cash conversion cycle, CCC. My old boss used to call it, he'd never wanted to play ball. I'm like, it's cash conversion cycle. And he's like, no, it's a day's cash or something. I'm like, okay, but fine. You know, again, classic manufacturing guy, but it's those three things. And so I see this hanging people up because your money on the street has value. You said it before, like, and I see this a lot. Companies become a bank, but you're not a bank. And when your AR is outstanding on the street for 120,
you're not making money on it.
Not only are you not making money on it, I would bet you, even if you're not on the line, it's costing you money. You're financing somebody else's project, somebody else's initiative, so whatever it is, right? And I would say many of your listeners, you probably are on a line of credit. So now factor that in, right? So now you're compounding an issue that's already problematic. So that's your AR. And then I think small business owners have a great heart. And this, we had an issue with a client, not an issue, challenge. They wanted to pay their subs like immediately. And I get it, right? You want to take care of everybody, but your customers are paying you in 60 days. You're paying your subs in 30 or 45 days. That delta, 15 to 30 days, you're out. So now you're constantly on the line, and nothing's ever like systematic, right? So now it's just happening time and time again. You can't ever get off the line because you're always upside down on your AR and AP. So matching those two things is important. The last thing I'll say too with businesses that have inventory, and again, not always applicable, but if you do, how much inventory do you need to carry? The manufacturers are classic for this. They love their inventory. And we have another client. They manufacture actuators, linear actuators. So they keep these aluminum extrusions on the shelf at all times, and they need to a degree, right? And again, without sharing specific numbers, you know, we got in, we're reviewing the balance sheet. We're like, why, relative to the size of the business, why is there literally $4 to $5 million of extrusions?
Because Jim, we can never run out of those.
We can never run. Or no, this is the classic one. Jim, I got a great deal at the end of the year, and I'm like, okay, but we're tying up so much cash, right? In just sitting, and you'll use it, I believe you. But if you use it 2 years from now, does it really help us today? Or does it even help us 6 months from now? And again, I think there's a balance there. So it's our job to come in and evaluate that, push back a little bit on some of the assumptions that maybe the math does make sense. You saved 10 cents on the dollar, and that's awesome. But at that 10 cents on the dollar that you saved is also sitting on the shelf. And that is not making you any money. None. So it's a balance. I'm not saying I'm anti-inventory, but I'm saying when we go back to cash
Reasonable.
conversion cycle, yeah, absolutely. And that might be seasonal. I would recommend looking at that quarterly. You don't have to make a change every month. For most businesses, that's too often, but you can probably do something quarterly.
So I have a really ignorant argument around your APAR statement because I hate paid when paid. I think it's the demise of the construction industry. If you're involved in any contracts that are that way, it is abusive at the lightest, kindest word. So I am one of those, not me, we are one of those people where we pay our vendors super, super fast.
Yeah.
And then we go fight for everything else, right? And we have a very specific AR process that's very, very successful. That's quite unique and weird. But someone has to stop with this whole, I can't pay you until I get money from X, because it is, I literally think it's killing the industry.
But to your point, you're not just sitting on your laurels saying that I'm going to pay my subs soon and I hope my customer pays me. That has to be an attack on both sides.
Fair point.
Right. So I'm not simply saying, and even with the one example I gave you, the AR collections process, that has to be tight, right?
Super tight.
So I was in the defense space, and I'm not sure if you know much about government contracting.
They're horrible.
It's terrible. And it's the government. So I'm not negotiating with President Trump, right? Like, it ain't happening. Like, let's face it. So it is what it is. And to a large degree, there are things you can do, but by and large, it is what it is, right? So, but I'm also saying I don't want to go out of business because I don't have cash. 85% of all business closures are related to cash flow. So,
wow, what a stat.
So look that up. Even if I'm marginally wrong, I don't care, right? Like,
plus or minus
what, right? So I know I don't want to make the single greatest mistake that could flush my business down the toilet. But to your point, so as much as that's a reality, it's not just an AP side of the equation. You have to manage the collection side, which goes to bill. So one of the things I'll say, you didn't ask me this, but I'll tell you, on the construction side, I see all the time is inconsistent billing. Oh my gosh. Like, especially if you're on cost plus contracts, like, my Lord, have a process of collecting all your expenses, get them in by the 25th of the month.
Schedule of values, people.
Schedule of values. Get it done. I have seen so many contractors, they're waiting for the second week of the following month, and they're just getting their shit together. And now you're crying the blues of cash flow. Like, you can't do that because now you're hurting yourself and your subs.
Yes, 100%. And that's what I get really frustrated with these major prime contracts that we always get tied to, as we're never the big fish in the pond. That's unfortunate, right? But we have to swing as hard as we can. So when I hear that from huge GC construction companies, I tell them, that's not my problem. Your financial acumen and cash flow and how you schedule your values for this project is not my problem, which is why I don't do that to our subs. Yeah. But you are right. It takes a very tactical, it takes weekly review of your billings. Is your project ahead or behind, not only on profit, but also on billings? Are you playing with someone else's money, or are you in the debt, or are you giving someone else money away? And that was a big transition for us that a lot of people were nervous about. But where I came from in the power plant construction, it's, listen, you're staying positive cash flow for 9 months on $15 million project. That's how we roll here, or we're not taking it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that kind of brings, we haven't really talked about this, but work in process. And that's kind of what you just articulated right there. Are you over or under billed on your project? Are you tracking your cost to complete? Again, going back to more of the profitability side, how's your actual cost versus your estimated cost? These are all things that should be part, and it sounds like for your company, they absolutely are part of your monthly process. But if you don't have these processes dialed in, there's not a shot you're going to be proactive on the AR or the AP side. Something you're going to be kind of shooting from the hip, and out of your goodness of your heart, you're going to want to take care of your vendors and suppliers, and that's a good thing. Don't get bit on the other side of it, though, and not managing your AR and your invoicing process.
Yeah, I love that. That's so true. That was a big shift for us as well. We were in a little bit in the mode of like, oh, We found out at 89% complete. Well, not even, it wasn't a percent complete. We're down to the last week of the job, right? And oh shit, we're going to lose money. No, we now know at 30% because I came from earned value management. That's what we did in our world that I came from. So it's like, no, we were talking change orders now. We're not talking change orders at the end of the job. All that project, the right way to do things is how we all should be. And if we all did that, everything would be so much smoother.
Yeah. And you're honing in on construction and listen, we're talking in very simple terms and I know it's not. The value chain here is deep, it's wide, it's complex. There's a lot of moving parts, so I don't want to like sound ignorant to that. I think that the message is be proactive.
100%. And track. The best, we had an AR person for probably the first 4 years I've been working at SWF. And it's that vacuum of person that has no power, but you're asking them to go ask money to people who don't give a shit. It doesn't work. I don't think it works from my experience. So what we did is when that person ended up moving on, we never replaced that person. We made AR everyone's problem. And we have a chain and it's tracked every week. And if your name's on that list, no one wants to be on that list from our company. And then it's like, okay, well, I'm going to go call them today because it starts with one person. If they can't get an answer, it goes to the next person. If they can't get an answer, it goes to the next person. If they can't answer, I'm on LinkedIn friending presidents saying, where's my money? Like that's the way.
Yes, oh my gosh. Yes, okay. I haven't heard that yet, but I love that. I absolutely love that.
Well, because like it's all of our problem, right? And if it gets to me, it's because 3 other levels have been, and levels is a terrible word there, but 3 other people have been ignored. That's not fair to us. We didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
You know, like we shouldn't have to go to this, but guess what? Sometimes that's what happens. Anywho. I'm off my tangent.
Yeah, you were on a soapbox there. I like it.
All right, quick timeout from the BS to talk about someone who actually helped me sort mine out. BS. I don't know if I can sort all of that out since it's part of my name. If your business is facing a real change and clarity feels like trying to read a map in the dark, you need to speak to my friend Scott Hackman and his team at SHV Partners. Scott doesn't just consult, he shows up, he asks bold questions, and somehow makes your whole team feel 2 inches taller just by being in the room. Scott's a pretty tall person, just a heads up. There's no buzzwords, no fluffy strategy decks, just real conversation, uncomfortable truths, and progress that actually sticks. So some consultants come in, it's all about proving your worth, circle backs, buzzwords, a lot of fluff, no real action. That's not what Scott does, and that's not what Scott's team does, which is amazing. So I've worked with him. He's the real deal. So hit up shvpartners.com or find Scott Hackman on LinkedIn. The links are also in the show notes below. But once again, what do I know? I'm just a gamer. What's one trait or process that separates a business that's ready for sale or investment from one that's not beyond the obvious revenue numbers?
I would say, as soon as you say that, first thing that comes to mind is, tribal knowledge. And brings me to so when I was at Parts Life, we bought one of our largest suppliers. It was a weird, long story. But one thing that I realized in the company we bought, this was an asset, but it was also very strange. There was a long tenure of employees. I'm talking machinists. I don't know if you're familiar with machine shops or not, but like machinists.
Impossible to find people.
And they literally carried around these notebooks in their back pocket. And it was like all the setup stuff.
Yep.
Like for their machines and the changeovers and the bits and the milling, and the whole thing, the lathe. And that was a microcosm of the greater issue of like every layer in this company was people that have, which is, I appreciate this, 10 years of 20, 30 years in the company. Awesome. But if that person leaves tomorrow or dies, we have a freaking problem.
Yep.
Right. And that kind of goes back to the greater thing that I see from going to your question, what's the risk of exit or transition or sale, is that there's not clearly documented process, role, responsibility, accountability. Organization charts, great. That's fantastic, but it means crap, right? Because if Ed, the machinist, doesn't have anything documented and he leaves and all of a sudden CNC machinist is gone, replacing that guy is going to be really hard. And that same principle is true all the way up through project management and engineering and then finance and accounting and HR, et cetera. So I think not having the time or effort, energy put around documenting process procedure in your organization will bite you in the ass at some point, especially for a strategic roll-up who, let's face it, they don't want to have to deal with this.
Correct.
So you're devaluing your own enterprise. You could have great financials. You could have great product and service, but then you start to peel away the onions in your organizational structure, and everything is tribal. Everything is, yes, it runs good, but it's only like, there's no redundancy. There's one single point of failure. These are things that, especially as your organization grows, becomes more complex, it will be evaluated and it'll ding you. At some point, it will ding you.
I love that. And I just want to reiterate, I think a really simplistic version of that, because I'm with you. I see it a lot. If you're a business owner, founder, executive, whatever, and there's a person that would keep you up at night knowing they would leave or if something happened to them, that's a problem. Yeah. Like, you better go shed responsibility, or you better start training a backup to help you sleep. If those people exist in your organization, solve that very quickly.
Can I add to that? If that's you, right? And that meant, so going back to the one example, the guy, the owner was the lead engineer, did all the estimating, right? Had all the relationships on the BD side. Again, like, man, it just like plummeted the value of the business, and which was good for us from a value perspective, but it took a lot of time post-acquisition backfilling these roles and we had to do the work, right? He could have done the work, but he didn't. He almost took the easy way out and saying, I'm going to hold on to all this, which is short-sighted. I mean, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's founderism, right? It's a really hard step to give up a lot of that. It's so funny you say that, because I actually had an individual early on in my career in this seat come to me about buying them out, and it was that exact conversation, because I kind of knew how they worked. And I said, well, why would I go do that when I could just hire you, because you are the business?
Yeah.
It's not a business, it's a person that has everything, right? But they put a lot of value in everything, because they are doing everything. They're running like crazy, and they see all the sweat equity, and they're trying to turn that into dollars where that's not exactly true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Well said, sir. As a husband and a father of 5, dang, what financial habits, personal or professional, have made the biggest difference in your ability to lead both at home and at work?
Oh my gosh, that's a loaded question. Man, so we do have 5 children, ages from 12 to 2, essentially every 2 to 3 years. We are done. So that's the good news.
That's what I call a habit.
That's a good habit. Not fully done, but you know what I mean? So like man, I guess I can't go without saying that especially being a business owner too, having a rock solid relationship with my wife has been fundamental, right? And I didn't ask, are you married?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So married. So for me, we'll be married 14 years in August. Yeah, I would say that's fundamental in starting the business, taking significant risk, and thankfully it's paid off. But now you know how it is. It's like, okay, the business can easily consume every part of your day, and maybe not even in hours, but up here. And in your attention. So I think having my wife is a great accountability to that, because she'll call me out the minute she sees something's off, which I need her to.
Yeah.
And I would say that's been huge in terms of especially having and prioritizing kids. My wife doesn't work, so there was a lot of pressure when I decided to leave, a large company as a vice president to start a little. What the heck is Backbone CFO? No, it is nothing, right? And let's call it what it is. That was a really challenging moment in season to say, hey, we're gonna step out in faith and do this. I needed to make sure that she was fully supporting of that before I even stepped into that position. So, which she was, thankfully. And again, along the way, it's not a one and done, but prioritizing marriage has been huge.
Yeah. So are you 14 years this August?
This coming on. Yeah. So 2025. Yeah.
We're 14 in September.
Oh yeah. That's awesome. That's so cool. Yes.
No, I'm married to an owner, so I understand the pressure that comes. I work directly from I love my boss and I live with her. But no, you're exactly right. I think people lose the aspect of how stable home life is so important for your work. Like, if I'm effed up at home, I am not the same effective person at work. Like I'm carrying that. I know some people said they can turn it off when they walk through the door. I'm not one of those people. I don't actually think most people can do that. I do have one person at work that I do think actually can do it, but I think it's not a skill a lot of people have. So, when we're working on culture, we spend a lot of time focusing on at home fixes as well as in the workplace fixes,
Yeah.
which is way more complicated and very difficult. I understand that, but like if you want maximum efficiency, I think happy people are the most efficient people that you can hire or have on your team. And that happiness is outside the walls and inside the walls, I feel. So,
Yeah, along that line, and now there's always a season of working a lot and all that kind of
yeah.
stuff. And I would say the first year of starting Backbone was definitely that year. But I will say, the last couple of years, I've been very intentional. I don't work at night. I
Good.
just don't do it because at least my simple brain, I turn off and on. I can't have like partial one way or the other. So like I'll wrap up here. I'll spend 5 minutes like kind of decompressing. I'm walking out and I'm walking out.
It's great.
And I'll walk back in tomorrow at 8 o'clock. But between now and then, it'll be no work, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I'm the same exact way. This is a hobby for me. I don't consider this work, even though there's benefits on both my personal and the professional side. Most of that's just around connections and people. Like it's amazing when you just start opening up your life to other people and how many amazing people are out there. But like once I'm done at work and I walk out of my office, like I'm on to either hobby mode or family mode or whatever. Like
Yeah.
it's so, and I watched Al, my father-in-law who built the company, like didn't have that off switch, and seeing what that does, like you got that separation is so crucial. And I think our generation, because I would assume we're close in age, I think it's easier for us because we have like we have a very direct line of like there will be separation between
Yeah.
between.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally, my father-in-law is a mechanic. He sold his business, 30 plus years of running that. It was not a large thing. It was very small. But Becca, my wife, like, I mean, I can't imagine this, but they would go to the station to eat dinner with their dad.
Get out.
Like,
Wow.
that's how bad it was, right?
Yeah.
So 6, 7 days a week was the normal. I can't imagine it. I don't want to imagine it. And I certainly don't want my kids to have that memory that they're sharing with their future spouse. Like, hey, I went to work and ate dinner at the station with my dad. I love Frank. If he's listening, like he's the best
We love
father-in-law,
you, Frank.
and I think he would admit like, hey, there's a significant toll and a price to
Yeah.
pay for that.
Yeah, that's well said. Backbone CFO promises clients greater time, fulfillment, and clarity. Can you share a story where better financial structure gave someone more freedom in life, like quitting a side hustle, reclaiming weekends, or launching something new?
Yeah. Again, kind of making this more personal than business. We have a client right now, been with us for a couple of years, growing, scaling about a $20 million company. And I'm going to preface this by saying there is a lot of things that contributed to this, not just Backbone CFO,
Yeah.
but certainly we're a part of the equation. Single dad, separated, but he's able to take significant amount of time to be with his only son, and step away from the business and feel like he's not, that there's not a compromise on what's happening on the financial aspect of growing his company, because he's an entrepreneur, he's growing, he wants to grow, still growing. So it's not like I don't have any like life or death crazy stories as much as things like that, where it's like, hey, this guy now is empowered to be able to step away from the business and still have the same step away without a pause, or step away without some kind of feeling of angst or anxiety or stress that something's not being managed or sought after. And that's really it's a relational component of having a fractional CFO, as well as a process that empowers him to be able to do those kinds of things. I'll say one more story, and this is kind of cool. Again, the personal touch. We have another client in the construction supply business, and his kids are, I guess, high school now. I'm sorry, college. They graduated high school. And the one son is like looking to get into the business. Like, this has been a monumental shift because he didn't think it was going to be a legacy business. And
Wow.
now the son is seeing, wow, dad, again, this isn't all Backbone CFO, but dad has established a company that's growing and has potential to even scale beyond what it is today. I think I'm kind of interested in that. And now he's starting to get into the business. And now the owner of the business, he has capacity and margin to invest into his son because he doesn't have to do all the things he was doing prior to us. So I think little things like that hit I'm big on the family component. Like when I see things like that, man, that is a freaking win all day long. I have no idea where that specific example is going to go. Maybe he doesn't take over the business. but maybe he does today. And 2 years ago, it wasn't even a thought.
Yeah. So this one really hits home for me because I'm fine tuning a keynote speech, which I've never done one, but I'm ready if ever I have to. And it's called I'm calling it Culture Won't Save You. And it is really around that this culture isn't this mythical beast that's this initiative that you go do to solve a problem. It's a byproduct of a healthy company. And I think this conversation around financial health of an organization, and I'm talking everything from AP to all the things we've talked about on this, contributes to opportunity and possibility for everyone internal, everyone in the family, anything external. Maybe you want to go M&A, maybe you want to build something. Like, it has to start with the financial piece to make sure that, holy crap, like, we can do really fun stuff. And then supporting the group to give people opportunity, potential upgrades, or not upgrades, I'm talking in gaming terms, promotions and all that kind of fun stuff. But like, we keep wanting to put culture in this box of like, oh, just go hire a consultant and make people happy. Well, no, it's a byproduct of like the health and everyone feeling the prosperous of the company. And I think it starts with the financial clarity.
I love that. You know, one of the things that, as you were saying that kind of, it makes me think about what we call our strategy session. And so it's essentially part of our engagement where once a month we meet with the owner, we go through the projections as we talked about. But what is so interesting, I wish I had like a hard number for this, or I should get a hard fact for this. The level of conversation that comes out of those environments is not what you would think, where people are just mulling through numbers, right? Because these are still business owners, right? At the end of the day, they're not accountants. We don't want them to be. What comes out of those conversations? Where are my kids going to college? What's next for my wife and I at post-retirement? When we exit, this is legitimately a very real story client looking at like moving multiple states away, kids still in the business. What does that look like? How do we make room for that? I mean, these are what the actual outputs are.
Yes.
It's not like, oh, well, what's the profit? How do we get it from 11% to 12%? I mean, okay, but if it ends there, it's probably not very meaningful.
Yeah.
So I think the meaningful stuff comes in these, what we cloak as like the CFO, strategy session. But really, like, let's face it, it's like, what are your plans, hopes, and dreams? And what are the big fears and uncertainties that you have that need to be mitigated so we can bridge that gap?
Yeah. What's all the hard work for?
There you go.
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah, that's wonderful. How do you see finance in small to mid businesses evolving with tech? Is the future CFO more data wrangler or advisory coach?
Yeah, I mean, and we'll just say AI, because why not? Man, it is such a real thing. Absolutely. I think AI is contributing, in our world at least, to speed.
Yeah.
Speed of decision making. I said something, I don't know, 20 minutes, maybe a half an hour ago, we're talking about what does the CFO bring to the table? Remember, I said 3 things: leadership, perspective, and accountability. I would say AI is going to lack in those things because of the realness, if that's a word, of what it takes to bring that stuff to the table.
Yeah.
But I'm not discounting the reality that data, speed, accuracy are all things that I believe is already contributing to and will continue to at a very rapid pace. So if anything, I see AI as an enabler to make your CFO or controller or whoever, really all your entire leadership team, better, faster, quicker, more reliable. But I think at the leadership level, you're going to need people at all times that can bring the perspective and the accountability to the table.
Yeah, I think the visionary, the people stuff is always going to be the outlier, right? But when you're talking, like, one thing I love, like, I am not very good at corporate finance, but that's why I love surrounding myself with really smart people. But I love getting graphs that I don't fully understand and then getting perspective and say, hey, can you break this? Like, even lawyer stuff, break this to layman's terms.
Yeah.
Tell me what as in my role, what should I be focusing on? Because I don't know. And like, learning with someone who answers me back instantly that I can trust, like, is crazy. Because then you stop being afraid of almost anything. And even if you're going to go in with an expert or a consultant or an advisory, prepping yourself on language and what they're providing or what you should watch out to, like, before you go into the meeting, one, you're going to speed up the time that you have to pay for, and your SOW is going to be so much tighter that it should always cost less.
I used to say this joke in sales calls, like, if you're hiring Backbone CFO for graphs and dashboards, I'm going to redirect you to Fiverr and you can get it for $25 an hour. Now I can just simply say, go to AI and it's free.
Yeah,
Go to
100%.
ChatGPT or whatever. But the principle of that joke is exactly the same. It's not changed a bit. And that is, you can get all of the data, the analysis all day long. Now you can kind of get it for free or for $20 a month, right? Through ChatGPT, and upload your spreadsheets and your financials. That is actually a great use case. I mean, I'm dead serious about that. Even if you have a CFO, it's still great. What you need in terms of advisory is going to be all the other things.
Yes, 100%. Well said. What's the most challenging financial lesson to get business owners to embrace? Maybe something that goes against their gut but makes all the difference.
First thing, gut reaction to that question is probably pricing. I think people are scared as hell to change their pricing.
Mediocre margin. We're still not good at it, but I love that you said that, because I think that is really, really hard, especially filtering it down to estimators, PMs, salespeople, you name it.
Man, how much can I share here? We have a client right now, been in business for 20 plus years. I don't know exactly how long, a long time. They are good at what they do. They know their shit. They have a good process. We have challenged them on pricing for the last almost year. And we're like inching away at change. But they have this sales guy in there. And again, he knows his stuff, knows the market, has the relationships. Can't do that, Jim. Can't do that. Megan's the CFO, and they say, Megan, I can't do that. There's no way the market will accept that. All right, well, let's make this, like, let's try this one change and then give it a month. All right, well, they accepted that, but there's no way we can make this change now. And it's like, why not? We're doing the break even analysis. We're doing all the data. We have the data that supports we have to make a change. We either are going to make a change on pricing or somewhere else. Did my camera just go out?
It did.
That's awesome.
I love that you have an Elgato. Me too. I love Elgato stuff.
Let's try that again. There it is.
There you go.
We got to make change somewhere. So it's either going to be on the front end or on the back end, maybe a combination of both. But what is absolutely true is everything can't stay the same, and you want these results at the end of the day. So I would say pricing. I think people are really scared. They have great relationships in the market, especially if you're well established. They have a lot of preconceived notions about what's possible. So I would say pricing.
Yeah, that is really, really good. That's a really good answer, dude. Last question. Crushing these. You've built credibility in growth capital acquisitions and business finance. What's the next frontier for Backbone CFO? Tools, models, industries, impact, question mark. Where do you want to go? What's your vision, homie?
Yeah. So as an entrepreneur, I'll answer it from that vein of thought. I see a $15 million business for us, in front of us. So this year, so let me backtrack. This is our fourth year in business. First year in business, we did 350,000 in sales. 300,000 in sales. Second year, we did 650,000. Last year, we crossed the $1 million mark. We're on pace to do a little over 2 million this year. So we're almost doubling every year. And I kind of have the foot on the pedal, and I feel like I'm in the season of life. Like, let's go, whatever we can do to grow, let's freaking grow. It unashamedly, I have a grow or die mentality.
Fast dogs.
And it's detracted certain people and it's attracted others. Oh man, I don't understand.
That's okay. Just keep rolling.
But I would say that, man, it's a huge market. I think the traditional finance stuff, not that it's done with by any stretch, as we've already talked about, but I see the fractional space just absolutely dominating, because I think people are becoming very cost conscious. And that's fair. I think with the use of AI and different things, low level stuff will look in the accounting and finance space will look very different. It looks very different today than it did when I started this business. And that is only exponentially changing. And what's going to become increasingly value is the advisory component to helping people grow. So I'm obviously very bullish and extremely biased in my opinion. And I'm all right with that, but I see this being a $15 million business in the next 5 years, which I'm highly excited about. Yeah.
Whew, that's amazing. Well, congrats so far with what you're doing, because love it. That was all my questions, Jim. That was baller status. Loved it. It was really good. And it's funny because you piqued so many thought processes in my head and things I've learned from really smart people so far. And I just love that it's aligned with a lot of the teachings that people are like, focus on this, focus on this, focus on this. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like going down the line and you're hitting all those things. So that made me feel good that we were in a good process. So one, thank you for doing this. Where can everybody find you? If they're like, holy shit, I need Jim's help. Where are they going?
Cool. BackboneCFO.com. There's a work with us page in the form there you can fill out, read a little bit about us. And then LinkedIn is probably the best place to get and just interact with me personally on a day-to-day basis. Jim Emmerich, you'll find me there. And website, LinkedIn. It's always good places to start.
Yeah, and that's Emmerich, Emerich, just to let everybody know for LinkedIn. And I would say you're reasonably active on there too, right? It's your go-to.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, love that. Anything else from anything I didn't cover that you would like people to know?
No, man. Appreciate you. This is awesome content. I think we got right to it, but I can't believe it's been an hour, man. This is we covered a lot of ground.
What did I tell you at the beginning? Did you forget after 2 minutes?
Yeah, man. This is good. Let's keep going. No, it's awesome. I hope the listeners get a lot of value out of it. Absolutely.
No, it's brilliant. And sometimes talking, I really appreciate you have a very good knack for explaining very difficult things very simply. And I think that's one of the scariest, hardest parts about what you're doing, especially for people like me who want to talk to people to help, but I don't even know what questions to ask. So you have a really good knack of knowing the ins and outs so well that you can say, okay, like let's start easy. I know you're scared. Let's start with these 3 things, get those right. Based on your financials, we fix that. It's going to help things down. Like that is exactly what I know, at least some of the people that I talked to and where I was, only 4 years ago with trying to figure out what good looks like, because you have aspirations, like you said, these owners and executives has aspirations for not only their people, their companies, the culture, but also maybe personal things they have to do with their families or whatever. And no idea how to get there. So really appreciate you bringing that knowledge, and it was crystal clear.
You're welcome. Loved it. Enjoyed it.
All right, everyone. That is Jim Emmerich, and we will catch you on the next episode. Thank you for listening.